Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, it's Tyler Anderson talk. Anderson came within 2 outs of throwing a no-hitter for the Dodgers, had it broken up in the ninth inning. We're going to talk about Dave Roberts' decision to let Tyler Anderson go for it despite a high pitch count. We're going to talk about a couple plays that maybe could have gone either way as far as being called hits. And we're going to talk about Tyler Anderson's all-star case and his overall season. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, my name is Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. Today's episode is brought to you by Sports Card Investor. Download the Sports Card Investor app today and easily browse over 630,000 cards from every sport, with hundreds more added each week. Available for free in the Google Play and Apple App Stores, or go to sportscardinvestor.com/locked on. All right, let's talk Dodgers. Vince, Tyler Anderson, America's stepdad. He is the talk of the town today. Took a no-hitter into the ninth inning, ended up throwing 123 pitches, a career high, and by far a season high, and had it broken up by Shohei Ohtani with 1 out in the ninth inning. I don't even know where to start with this. It was a great game. I think, though, the place to start, we're going to kind of analyze some of individual plays throughout the game, but the fact that Tyler Anderson, whose manager, as you know, is Dave Roberts, who is famous for pulling guys during no-hitters. He's done it 3 different times, and all of them had varying degrees of controversy. This time he didn't pull Anderson, even though Anderson looked like he was like tweaking his arm a little bit for the last 4 innings of the game. I don't know, a lot of reasons why you thought he might pull him, but in the end, he let Anderson go for it. What were your thoughts on that decision?
My first thought was that you laughed at the Cardinals for letting Mikolas go 130 pitches to try to get the no-hitter, and we were in that territory. If he had gotten that one more out, we would have been in that territory.
Believe me, I definitely thought about that too. It was just hours after I chuckled at that. Yeah, but you know what? I like this because we've said. I mean, if you look at the 3 individual ones, the high profile ones, you had Ross Stripling, you had Rich Hill, and you had Clayton Kershaw. Ross Stripling, it was the first start of his career. He was coming off Tommy John surgery not too long ago. They had a hard limit of 100 pitches set for him before the game, and they stuck with their plan. Rich Hill was coming off a blister issue. He had spent a month and a half on the injured list with blister issues. He was coming off that, and they needed him for the postseason. And then Clayton Kershaw, as we talked about at length, a couple of months ago, it was his first start of the season after a shortened spring training. It was negative 500 degrees in Minnesota or whatever it was, a ton of reasons. But every time I said, in different situations, this might be different. If you have a healthy starter, a veteran who, it's mid-season, so he's built up, yeah, they'll let him go for it. It's just, the circumstances have worked against Dodgers pitchers a couple times. But I think what we saw here is exactly what I was talking about, that, yeah, under the right circumstances, they're willing to let a guy exceed their expected pitch count or whatever to chase that history.
And even though Anderson was up there in pitch count, he was never really threatened. He didn't have those high stress pitches, as they like to call them. He was basically cruising the whole time, other than he got into a few 3-ball counts more than he wanted probably early on in the game. But other than that, I mean, he didn't really have any issues. He put down Ohtani and Trout 3 times already to that point, and he seemed to be cruising. And then also, like I said, Anderson, veteran, built up, the type of pitcher he is. He's not blowing fastballs by you. He's a changeup heavy. there's a lot of factors that played into it, and I'm honestly glad they let him go for it, not just for the fact of I don't want to hear about it again as a Dodger fan and all that kind of stuff, but just because as a baseball fan, you want to see. I mean, yesterday I would anytime there's a no hitter going into the eighth inning, I usually put it on if I'm able to and watch it. And as a fan, you're there to see it, and for it to be a Dodger, it's even better. I almost regretted not going to the game because I was going to go originally, but in the end, it all worked out.
Yeah, and even yesterday's show when I was chuckling about the Cardinals letting Miles Michaelis throw 130 pitches and not getting the no hitter, you know, it wasn't even a criticism of them because Michaelis is in that same boat. He's a journeyman veteran who, Miles Michaelis, if he throws a no hitter, that immediately is the highlight of his career. And Tyler Anderson's in that same boat. Clayton Kershaw, if he had thrown a perfect game this season, it would have been like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Definitely, near the top of his best, obviously his best game or whatever. But Clayton Kershaw is a 3-time Cy Young Award winner, an MVP. He's thrown a no-hitter. He's won a World Series, and all those things. It's a different thing. And so when you're letting a veteran chase a personal accomplishment, and the point that Oral made during the game, and who knows how much of it is just kind of wishful thinking, but the changeup, the way a split finger changeup can have a little stress on the arm, a circle change or whatever it is that Anderson's throwing, it's not a hugely stressful pitch on the arm. Doesn't mean they're going to let him come out and throw 123 pitches every game, but especially when you also look at the fact that they have 2 days off in the next 5 days, and so he'll probably get an extra day. Even with Buehler going down, he probably gets an extra day of rest before his next start. All of that kind of combines to say, yeah, go for it, and I'm glad he went for it. But going into the ninth inning, I was like, I just don't see any way he's going to get through Trout and Ohtani again. And when he struck Trout out, I thought, okay, maybe, but I don't know. Shohei Ohtani, he's such a good hitter and so good at hitting. Like, the thing I've noticed about Ohtani over the years is he hits pitches that he has no business hitting. And, not all the time. And sometimes he can be made to look bad. But, Anderson had already struck Ohtani out twice in this game. It's like, Ohtani was like the definition of due. And so he hit that. Anderson said he knew right off the bat that it was a hit. He appreciated the gesture by Mookie going all out for it. But I mean, Mookie's dive, he didn't get within 4 feet of the ball, and maybe damages Anderson's ERA a little bit, because if he just goes, he maybe can hold Ohtani to a single if he plays that normal, and and then Anderson doesn't allow a run. But he went all out for it like you have to in that situation. And I mean, it wasn't likely that he was going to get that no hitter, but I'm really glad they let him go for it.
Yeah, I'm glad to let him go for it. And the thing with Ohtani, I mean, that's back-to-back nights in the ninth inning, first pitch, Ohtani swinging, and he gets a big hit in the moment. Didn't end up really being a big hit in general, but yeah, he's tough to beat, because even if you have him fooled, even if you have him beat, I mean, both times yesterday with Kimbrel's pitch, or the night before, and then last night with Anderson's pitch, he was somewhat beat on those pitches, but was still strong enough to muscle him into the outfield for extra bases. So that was just a matter of it. I thought he was gonna get Trout and Ohtani, and then Duffy was gonna like do a C-nice single up the middle or something. That's what I was expecting. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was fun to watch, fun to be a part of, fun to see, all the jokes, at least on my side of Twitter, were about how Roberts was going to take him out. I know I was part of that. But in the end, they let him stay in, and, we got to see what would have happened. The other ones will always have that thing of what could have happened, but with this one, we got to see it out. And, at this point, that's all we can ask for as fans of Dodgers and fans of baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And once he came out for even the seventh inning, you're like, okay, they're going to let him go for it, because he was already, I think he was at 99 pitches
after seven,
87
so, after 6.
Yeah. So once he came out for the eighth, you knew they were going to let him go until he gave up a hit or finish the game. So there were a couple plays earlier in the game that maybe could have been scored hits, or maybe would have been in other situations. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about those and a couple little hypotheticals that are kind of interesting to us. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. I want to talk to you about Sports Card Investor. It's an app that's available on your phone, whether you have Android or iPhone. It's a cool app where basically you can search up trading cards, baseball cards. I'm going to say baseball cards because that's the term I use because I don't collect other cards, but I have way too many baseball cards. And one of my goals is to sell some of them because partly because I could use the money and partly because I have too many. And so this app is really cool because, if you've got a card, say you're like, oh, this card, it's got, uh, it's got Ronald Acuna and Jazz Chisholm together. That's a cool card. I wonder what that's worth. Check out your sports card investor app. They'll tell you, by what it's worth. I mean, how much are they selling for? Because that's what a card is worth. It's like the old Beckett price guide we used to have when we were kids, except it's an app and it'll tell you, hey, in the last 7 days, here's how much these cards have sold for. In the last 30 days, here's how much. And you can kind of search and research that way. You can say, okay, show me what are the most popular cards recently are now. What are the ones that the value is going up? Because you might say, oh yeah, I actually have that card. I didn't realize it was worth anything. So there's a ton of different things you could do. Whether your goal is to sell off your collection or just you've got a cool collection, you're wondering what it's worth. This app, Sports Card Investor, it has everything you need to kind of get that information you need, whether you're trying to sell or just want to know what your collection's worth. So download the Sports Card Investor app today. It's available for free in the Google Play and Apple app stores, or go to sportscardinvestor.com/locked on. Hey, we have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you for your help. All right, we are back. As we mentioned, this is kind of an all Tyler Anderson episode. Can you imagine, Vince, if you had told us 6 months ago, hey, in June, you're going to be doing an episode that's entirely devoted to Tyler Anderson? I would not have believed it.
After an episode that was not entirely for Tony Gonsolin, but Tony Gonsolin based.
Yeah, the Dodgers' number 5 starter is now 16-0 this year. The Dodgers' 5th starting spot started as Tony Gonsolin and Tyler Anderson piggybacking each other, and they are now both 8-0 with ERAs. Gonsolin's ERA is minuscule. Anderson's is a pedestrian 282. Which that was sarcasm. That's very good. It's crazy, but there were 2 plays. Actually, the first play of the game, there was a pop fly into right center field that Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger, they didn't communicate well on. I don't know what happened. This is 2 days in a row that Bellinger maybe didn't communicate as well with another guy. Yesterday it was Lux. Today it's Betts. Who knows? Betts caught the ball as they collided, and then the ball eventually came out of his glove. They called it a hit initially. Bellinger picked up the ball, fired in a second, and threw out Taylor Ward going to second base on it. So no harm done there. As I mentioned, it was originally called a hit. Joe Davis even said, doesn't really matter if they call it a hit. They got the out, so unless Tyler Anderson ends up throwing a no-hitter, other than that, it's not really that big a deal. Turns out they did change it to an error at some point. Maybe, I don't know exactly what point they changed it. I was listening on the radio at the time. I don't know if it was when they realized, oh, he is throwing a no-hitter. Other than that, but I assume it was fairly early.
I want to say it was like the 4th or 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there.
Early-ish.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing that Vince and I were talking about before we hit record is, what if that had happened in the 6th inning? Because they call it a hit like they did initially with this. Would the Dodgers have challenged even though they got the out? Because the fact is, that was a catch. Mookie Betts caught the ball, fell down, rolled over 11 times, did a football move, and then the ball came out of his glove. That's a catch. I have a really hard time seeing any umpire booth in New York looking at that and saying, nope, he didn't catch that, because he had control of that for a while.
Yeah, and that was, Joe Davis said it jokingly because it was the first inning, first batter of the game. It ended up getting changed later, but that was my initial thought, was reverse side of this. Let's just say this was in the 6th or 7th inning. Yeah, the Dodgers got the out, but they're challenging that play, I think, assuming they have their challenge, because to keep the no hitter. And it would be, I don't know if it would be the first time, at least first time for Dodgers, where they challenge a play that already went in their favor to get a different result. But that would have been, a fun little twist on the challenge and how it works. And I'm sure one day we're gonna see it like that. But it could have been yesterday, but unfortunately it wasn't. But yeah, I mean, that was my first thought. And then we're talking about this play. We're gonna talk about another play right now, and I think that was the other part that helped me reserved from this is going to be a no hitter. Is there wasn't the play as they like to deem it and call it. There was Trey Turner stopping that one and getting the force out at second was about as close as we got to that. But even then, it wasn't necessarily like a crazy play. It was just a smart heads up play.
Yeah, it was hit right at him. So
Yeah.
it's hard to be the play like that. Yeah, it's there wouldn't be any harm or any risk in challenging that other than losing your challenge because like I said, it's not like they're going to come back and say, nope, it's not a catch, and therefore you don't get the out at second base after all. They get the out either way. So yeah, it would have made sense to challenge it in that situation if they had their challenge available, which who knows if they would have with them being the Dodgers. The other play that you alluded to was an error on Tyler Anderson. What's his name? Walsh. Jared Walsh and Brandon Marsh are the same person in my head. Their names are very similar. They were prospects at the same time. And if you combine them, you get Brandon Walsh from Beverly Hills 90210, which to people of my age, it's a common name. So anyway,
They also have Taylor Ward and Tyler Wade. So
that's just illegal. Yeah, knock that off. Yeah, I think Joe Davis in the two games called Taylor Ward Tyler Wade 11 times in the two games. So not as bad as Charlie Steiner never getting Tyler White's name right. Called him Smith every time on the radio. Anyway, Jared Walsh hit a little dribbler down the first baseline. Anderson got there in time to make the play, spun around and threw the ball, missed Freeman by, I don't know, 15 feet, like almost as much as the distance between Anderson and Freeman. That's how far offline the throw was. And they immediately called it an error. And I believe if there wasn't a no-hitter going on, that's clearly a hit that they would definitely call a hit no matter what. Don't you think?
My only quibble with it is that by the time Anderson got the ball, what's his name? Whoever was running was like halfway. So, in theory, I guess, depending how you look at it, he had a reasonable time to make the play. It almost seemed like the throw was so bad that it almost seemed he spiked it on purpose just to keep the no hitter part alive. So, like, it looked so bad that the only way you could call it was an error. That's kind of what it looked like. I think I think he was just trying to rush too much, and that's what ended up happening. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, when you see those types of 50-50 plays, they end up becoming hits. So I do think if there was a no hitter, they would have called it a hit. I don't know if they'll go back and change it now. I don't know if the official scorekeeper cares that much about Ward or Marsh or whoever it was. But yeah, I think if it had been down the third base line, then it's for sure a hit. But since it was up first base line, by the time he had the ball, he still had a reasonable chance to throw him out. He just completely botched it.
None of the above. Walsh.
Yeah,
Walsh. Yeah, what I've seen, I actually follow a Twitter account that tracks scoring changes, and a very common theme of those changes is if a guy has to make a barehanded play, they almost never give him an error on it. And Anderson had barehanded, he had to do a spin move. Uh, Part of me was a little surprised that the Dodgers didn't come out and protest because Marsh was no Walsh was man, I don't know why I even try. Walsh was not way inside the line, but he was definitely in violation of the rule because the rule says you have to be entirely outside the line, in between the baseline and the 45-foot line, as they call it. And he was not. He was right on the baseline, and so his left foot was definitely inside the baseline on every step. And so, if I was Anderson, I probably would have just thrown it right into his back and counted on the umpires to make that call. And in a no hitter, I think the umpires are more likely to make that call. But either way, and even then, because if you hit him in the back, you're still going to get the same throwing error you would throwing it away. So, yeah, it's interesting. I am interested to see if they will change that. If they do, it'd be kind of fun because then Shohei Ohtani no longer gets credit for breaking up a no hitter. He gets credit for breaking up a one hitter. Uh, and then we can all retroactively say, why did Mookie go all out for that and turn that single into a triple? It just changes history. And then Biff ends up owning a casino, and Marty kisses his mom. That's all I know about Back to the Future.
There you go.
You got any other thoughts on those two plays?
Nah, I got them all out.
All right, we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to talk about Tyler Anderson's season overall, how unexpectedly good it has been, and his case to make the All-Star team. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. As the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's talk about Built Bar. There's a new flavor. It's called Mud Pie. Our friends at Built Bar are always coming out with new, amazing flavors. Well, this time they've truly outdone themselves with their new Mud Pie flavor. And for the first time ever, Built is introducing the new Mud Pie flavor in both Mud Pie Bar and Mud Pie Puff. You're not sure what Mud Pie tastes like? Well, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new Mud Pie Bar is rich whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. Doesn't that sound extraordinarily unhealthy? Well, guess what? It's not, because it's Built. Built Bar, they do everything healthy. They somehow make it taste delicious, and yet a mud pie is packed with 16 grams of protein and only 150 calories and 8 grams of sugar. 150 grams of sugar is more like a candy bar. 150 calories and 8 grams of sugar, that's a Built Bar. It's like your mom baked the most deliciously creamy chocolate mud pie and wrapped it up just for you and somehow made it healthy. So go check out the mud pie if that sounds good. They got a bunch of other good flavors. Whatever you get, go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you will get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And we have returned for our final segment of our Tyler Anderson, all the time, America's stepdad, Tyler Anderson. If you're just joining us, nobody actually joins a podcast 2/3 of the way through, right? I think that's more for TV, but I'll recap anyway. If you're just joining us, Tyler Anderson almost threw a no-hitter, 8 1/3 no-hit innings, combined with Tony Gonsolin. That's 14 2/3 innings pitched in this 2-game series, 2 hits allowed. That will do. We spent yesterday talking about Tony Gonsolin's All-Star case. He's got a case to start the All-Star game on the mound. Tyler Anderson making a pretty darn good case to be on the All-Star team, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you go by almost any stats, you can find Tyler Anderson on the All-Star team pretty easily. You go by the simple counting stats that we've had focused on for most of the time. 8-0 with the 2.82 ERA, 0.94 WHIP. That's very hard to argue with. And then you look down at some of the peripherals, and he's up there, up top tier, and exit velocity allowed and hard hit percentage. He's elite in chase rate, getting guys to chase, and he's doing that. I mean, this doesn't add to his All-Star case, but he's doing this all throwing pitches that I don't think he's hit 94 this season with the pitch so far. So it's impressive no matter which way you spin it. For the Dodgers, it's obviously been impressive the way him and Gonsolin have been able to carry them. I mean, 16-0 from 2 guys that you had no idea really what to expect coming into the season. You signed Tyler Anderson for $8 million. Even if he doesn't do anything the rest of the year, he's already been worth that $8 million, I would imagine, or close to it in terms of the value he's brought. And yeah, of coming into the season, if you said the Dodgers were going to have 2 pitchers that were all-stars, I don't think there'd be many people that would have picked Tyler Anderson and Tony Gonsolin, but yet that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and even earlier in the season, Clayton Kershaw looked like, I mean, he was making a case to start the All-Star game. Andrew Heaney was outstanding in the two starts he was able to make so far. Kershaw and Heaney both got hurt, and so I still wouldn't be surprised to see Kershaw on the All-Star team when the time comes around, even with the missed time. But yeah, I mean, Gonsolin and Heaney, or Gonsolin and Anderson, are kind of their top two. And to underscore your point about his fastball tonight topped out at 92.9 miles an hour. He threw a four-seam fastball 88 miles an hour. Like he does not throw hard, and yet he throws really, really well. And that changeup that's been the difference this year for him, is that changeup. And he was messing around with a new grip in spring training, and he just figured something out. And I don't know how much of that the Dodgers get credit for. There was a cool article in The Athletic from, I think, Nick Groke, who covers the Rockies, about Yency Almonte. I don't know if you saw that, Vince, on Wednesday, that basically when Almonte hit free agency, his buddy Jake McGee, former teammate, said, go to the Dodgers. They're going to help you get better. And Almonte went to the Dodgers, and they said, okay, here's why your fastball sucks. Let's stop throwing that. Let's throw a different fastball. Here's why you ought to be throwing this slider. They had video of, here is the slider you want to throw. Here's one you've thrown that was perfect. Do that every time. And they actually figured out, and so they've turned Yency Almonte into what he is. I don't know how much of the credit they deserve for Tyler Anderson, but it seems like it can't be all coincidence that every pitcher comes to the Dodgers and gets a lot better, and that changeup tonight. So Tyler Anderson had 13 swings and misses, and 9 of them were on the changeup. It is, and even when it wasn't a swing and miss, he got groundouts. That inning that they were talking to Clayton Kershaw, he got 3 groundouts all on the changeup. That's just a devastatingly effective pitch for a guy who doesn't throw hard, but it shows changing speed and movement. There's that fun quote from Greg Maddux, said, you don't need to steal signs. I'll tell you what I'm going to throw. It's an 89 mile an hour sinker, and you're not even going to swing at it. And that's kind of the boat that Tyler Anderson's in right now. Like, even if you know what's coming, it's really hard to hit.
Yeah, and for the most part, what's coming, and it's a matter of, chicken before the egg type of thing. Tyler Anderson this year, he found that changeup grip, and now he's throwing the changeup more than he ever has in his career. In 2020 shortened season, he was on a similar plane, but last year he threw his changeup 24.6% of the time. This year he's up to 32% of the time. His fastball usage last year, four-seam fastball, was 37.3%, down to 31.5% this year. So it's a matter of that little change. And, speaking about the changeup, Kershaw was on during the broadcast and talking about how Anderson showed him the grip, and he said he couldn't figure it out, didn't like the way it was, whatever the case. They pressed him a little bit more about it, and he said, yeah, I threw like 3 pitches, and I just didn't like it. Kershaw said he's tried about 15 different changeup grips, hasn't figured it out. But judging on the fact that he gave up on this one after 3 pitches, I think it's more of Kershaw as a perfectionist, and if it doesn't feel right the first time or first 3 times, he's been throwing it out. So it's just funny. But yeah, I mean, Anderson, he's out there throwing that winning that Kershaw was talking was 3 ground balls all on changeups. I mean, it's something that's working. He's continuing to do it, and it's now far enough into the season where it's not just a fluke. Is he going to be 2.82 the rest of the year? Maybe not, but I don't think he's going to be a 5 ERA pitcher the rest of the year either.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, even that 282 is somewhat inflated because he's had a couple, maybe not clunkers, but he had that game against the Phillies when he gave up 7 runs. He had to go out there and wear it, and then his last start against the White Sox when he gave up 4 runs in 3 innings. And you take out those 2, he's allowed 10 earned runs all season in, let's see, that's 9 innings combined, and it's 67, 58 innings, 10 earned runs. That is very, very good. I'll tell you how good. Vince, say something real quick while I punch in numbers to a calculator.
Just punching in numbers to a calculator. But yeah, I mean, you look at the changeup again real quick.
155 ERA.
You
if you take out those 2 games, his ERA is 155. Now, those 2 games happened. You can't just take those out. But it kind of shows that, like, with he's been better than his 2.82 ERA would say. And, even that Phillies game, he wore that for the team. He didn't have it that day. On any other day, the Dodgers would have pulled him after 2 innings or whatever, saved his ERA, but he had to wear that one. And he gave them the 6 innings that they needed him to do because they were in the middle of a crazy stretch of games. He's been the ultimate team player this year and really, 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 really good.
Yeah. One thing real quick, looking at the stats, there's expectations play a part into stats and how, surprised or shocked or however you are about them. Among qualified pitchers in the National League, Tyler Anderson's 9th in ERA. The guy right up in front of him is Julio Diaz with a 2.80 ERA. And we've kind of, I don't think anyone would say Julio's having a great season. But as much as Anderson's been good, Julio's still slightly better than him, at least in ERA. But yeah, it's just funny. Dodgers have 3 of the top 9 in National League ERA for qualified pitchers. And that's with Kershaw probably getting there once he's qualified again, and Walker Buehler not being as good, and Andrew Heaney not having a lot of run in his 2 starts. So.
Yeah. When you've got the 3 of the top 9, and none of them are Kershaw or Buehler or the guy who hasn't a lot of run yet this season, that'll play.
Not bad.
All right. I think we finished up our Tyler Anderson centric episode, right?
Yeah, Tyler Anderson, a full 30 minutes dedicated to you. Congratulations.
Congratulations to America's stepdad, Tyler Anderson, on the best game of your career. And by the way, Dodgers just swept the Angels in a 2-game series. And as we mentioned yesterday, doesn't really matter, but the Angels are one of those teams that it's not fun to lose to. So good job not losing to the Angels, Dodgers.
Yeah, and I think the Dodgers have won like 11 of the last 14 now against the Angels. So because there was a while there where the Angels were bad, Dodgers were good, and they still lose to the Angels, but now they seem to right that ship.
The key is to not have Chase Utley try to play first base, right?
Yeah.
That's going to do it for today. Off day today, which means tomorrow's episode will be a mailbag. We're probably going to record it a little earlier in the day. Hopefully, I haven't talked to Vince about that yet, but this is me talking to Vince saying, hopefully we record that a little bit earlier in the day because on Friday, I am driving down to Dodger Stadium to make my season debut. And so I got to leave first thing Friday morning. So get your questions in, soon, and we will get to those. And there's another off day on Monday. So anything we don't get to on tomorrow's episode, we'll have another mailbag soon. But thank you all for listening to Locked On Dodgers. We really appreciate it. For your second listen, the first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of Locked On and NBA Big Board. The 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. If you're not watching or listening to every episode of Locked On Dodgers, we'd love if you add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends and family who love the Dodgers as much as you do, please tell them about the show and maybe they'll like it. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snider, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com. And our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.